the audience now. Navid Bargrizan, thank you, and his lecture. Navid Bargrizan is a PhD fellow in historical musicology at Florida and pressing economic and composition too. Previously, he studied systematic musicology, historical musicology, art history, and composition in Hamburg with Manfred Stahnke and in Tehran. You can read the whole text in the booklet here, and I will continue that he's a composer and he experiments with microtones and tunings and tone systems as well and intonations. His music is performed in USA, Germany, around the world, and now he has awarded the German Studies Scholarship, which enables him to conduct his dissertation research in Germany. And I think you will take something of this now from the results of your German studies, isn't it? So, thank you.
Placed in Manfred Stahnke's constructed world, an artistic Orpheus is lost in the complexity of a multimedia opera. Struggling with his own thoughts, Orpheus seeks his lost self-identity amid his immediate form on the stage and its virtual extension represented by the use of the internet. He reacts to the incoming sounds that emerge from the internet in an attempt to get to know and to locate himself in its media world. He's trapped within his thoughts until three imaginary Eurydice characters appear on the stage confronting him and his hallucinations of the most traumatic event in his life, the loss of his Eurydice. As he attempts to face his memories and cope with his loss, he constantly endeavors to remember what happened to his Eurydice throughout the course of the opera. Orpheus Kristall, Stahnke's German opera in two media for stage and remote musicians, resulted from a cooperative project initiated by the Munich Biennale for Contemporary Opera 2002 and the Siemens Art Program. The purpose of this collaboration was to explore the theme of opera as virtual reality. In this pioneering work, the Hamburg-based composer extends the boundaries of the live music on stage through integration of vast external world via the internet as an integral part of the performance medium. He also uses a finely tuned system of 53 tones to octave, his own concept of different tone harmony, and extensive microglissandi to characterize Orpheus' inner battle within his extended technological world. In fact, Stahnke's innovative approach to integrating digital media in the performance and his extensive multifaceted microtonal construction is the foundation for the entire opera. While Stahnke has authored articles disclosing the sophisticated compositional procedures in his works, here I analyze them as much as they relate to the use of technological and microtonal structures in this opera. Concentrating on the opera's technological aspect, I argue that the internet, as a technological artifact, embodies the role of mediation in Orpheus Kristall to clarify the allegorical relationship between Orpheus and his extended world. In this opera, Orpheus uses the internet as an object to relate to the large, confusing world, using objects as a mediator between an individual and the external world is not new to humans, and technology philosopher Peter Paul Verbeek has expounded upon this notion of mediation as follows. I articulate an approach to technological artifact in human existence. The key concept of this approach is mediation. When technological artifacts are looked at in terms of mediation, how they mediate the relation between humans and their world, amongst human beings, and between humans and technology itself, technologies can no longer be pigeonholed simply as either neutral or determinate. In other words, based on the concept of mediation, technology is able to shape the nature of the human-world relationship. Here, Verbeek looks at technology as a possible form of mediation for human beings to be confronted with reality. In Orpheus Kristall, the allegorical relation of Orpheus to his extended world symbolizes the reflections of Orpheus' memories of Eurydice and her catastrophic death. The external world is realized in the performance by the remote musician's sounds coming to the stage through the internet, filtered by control boards and amplified by speakers. Integrated with the medium of internet to clarify the aforementioned relationships and extending the borders of the live stage music represents a notable technological issue in Orpheus Kristall, as I shall demonstrate. This paper will also address the allegorical representation of key contemporary existential issues within Orpheus Kristall, namely the correlation between Orpheus' inner battle and the non-fixed fluid world of microtones in Stahnke's microtonal system. Orpheus endeavored to overcome the cold crystal of his corrupted, non-functioning inner world by grasping onto the external world's internet sounds. I further argue is analogous to composer's desire to break through the limited scope of equal temperament, as well as his attempt to expand the narrow reach of the immediate stage. Orpheus Kristall is a successful example of a multimedia art piece that draws upon mythology in order to address issues related to cultural and personal identity while shedding light on the subtle amalgamation of mythology, technology, and microtonality. For this operatic collaboration, Stahnke, the librettist, the director, and the dramaturg agreed upon a different conception of the Orpheus myth, even though Orpheus has been the subject of several artistic projects throughout the history. The question is, what would be their contribution to the Orpheus myth? Stahnke's own answer is related to the plot. This opera does not tell a story. The story is rather pushed far behind. Only an echo of the story remains to be heard. Stahnke considers, however, at least two distinct possible storylines. First, the classic story of Orpheus. Orpheus descends to the underworld of Hades to retrieve his beloved Eurydice. He fails and eventually collapses. Second, a transformation of the Orpheus myth. He escapes from the underworld, but Eurydice seduces him when she realizes that she would no longer be able to have contact with Orpheus. In Stahnke's version of the myth, however, the notion of nature is even more important than in the original story. In my interviews with Stahnke, he addressed the following relationships of the original Orpheus myth, as well as his own rendered version to the concept of nature. Orpheus is a magician who reaches out to stones, animals, and plants through his music. He has power over the cosmos upon the humans. It is at once animism, considering nature as the spirit of everything and everyone, but also shamanism, which is an ancient culture and still exists partially in Siberia, Korea, or Japan. In other words, Orpheus is a Greek version of the old shamans. In Stahnke's opera, Orpheus rules a world that he created, a world that extends beyond the borders of the stage. The composer adds some other islands across the world to Orpheus' territory of the opera hall. These islands are connected to the main stage through the internet, from New York and Berkeley to Amsterdam. Within this new world, the autistic Orpheus suffers from his memories of falling in love with Eurydice, winning her and eventually losing her. He even may have murdered her, says Stahnke. This possibility leads to another component of the opera. Stahnke points out the desires to make, to build, but to build in vain, since we cannot win, we destroy what we have built. As a matter of fact, all these possible plots coexist simultaneously throughout the opera. In this opera, Kristall is a metaphor for nature, for Orpheus' corrupted world. Stahnke borrowed this term from the Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger's concept of aperiodic crystals from his influential book What is Life? In this seminal text, in an era before the biological structure of the human DNA was fully exposed, Schrödinger proposes the concept of aperiodic crystal as the molecular material carrier of life. He juxtaposes this concept, which stands for the rather complicated and non-repetitive structure of a gene and the rigid and plain structure of natural periodic crystals, as it was already understood in the physics. In his words, an organism's astonishing gift of concentrating a stream of order on itself and thus escaping the decay into atomic chaos of drinking orderliness from a suitable environment seems to be connected with the presence of the aperiodic solids, the chromosome molecules, which doubtless represent the highest degree of well-ordered atomic association we know of, much higher than the ordinary periodic crystal, in virtue of the individual role every atom and every radical is playing here. Inspired by Schrödinger's thesis, for Stahnke, the complicated, rigorous structure of periodic crystals is a metaphor for his intricate Microtonal system, comprising 53 tones to octave. He employs this scale exclusively for the improvisation of the remote musicians. In this regard, Stahnke mentions, how are we able to deal with an internet opera which includes building crystals, tone systems, and internet? Tone systems are analogous to crystals, but in this omnivorous Europe, the crystal is already very old, our great-grandfather, the 12 tonical temperament. Stahnke employs his specific just-intoned tone system, including the partials up to the 21st overtone in the harmonic series. His system consists of 53 equal intervals which linearly would build a scale of 1/8 tones. In other words, using intervals embedded in the harmonic series, it creates an approximate elaboration of equal temperament, extending the realm of 12 tones to 53 tones to octave. About the relationship of this scale to the ancient musical cultures and its characteristics, Stahnke mentions, that is an old Mozarteum and Baroque system. Even the ancient Chinese people knew that building up a scale of 53 natural fifths practically results in the octave. Using 53 tones to octave opens the door to a lexicon of perverse and useful intervals. There, you are suspiciously close to the world of noises. Here we see how Stahnke's tonal concept has its roots in the ancient world, as well as in nature, representing the world of Orpheus and the world of the natural's untempered tones, questioning or dominating the tempered tonal world. The second significant microtonal element in this opera is a slow, long microglissandi, where we can experience a diverse and constantly morphing microtonal world. This is an effect that Stahnke often applies in his compositions. In Orpheus Kristall, the extensive use of microglissandi is related to the constantly mutating thoughts of the autistic Orpheus. Stahnke relates the extensive use of microglissandi to the storylines, if there is such a thing as a storyline in this opera, as follows. There is the threshold of form recognition in the constantly mutating Meloharmonic image as a consequence of microglissandi and pulse fluctuations. As if Hades is the world of formlessness, and as if form comes from an inaccessible, different world. In other words, the vague microtones, which are located between the fixed half and whole tones, as opposed to the familiar tones of the equal tempered tonal scale in formlessness versus form. The scale consisting of 53 tones to octave, used by the remote musicians, and microglissandi, used by the stage orchestra, are therefore the most essential elements in the tonal construction of the opera. Alongside juxtaposition of the stage and internet music, these tonal elements create contrast between the notions of formlessness and form. Orpheus desperately desires to reach his now dead formless Eurydice. Hence he travels to the Hades, where the distinction between form and formlessness is not as clear. He nearly regains his Eurydice, but he loses her again, and therefore loses himself as well. This dichotomy between form and formlessness is conceived throughout the work by means of the contrast between the realm of half and whole tones and the domain of microtones, all of which is amplified by the improvisatory world of internet sounds, in contrast to the stage-produced sounds. To realize the dichotomy of form and formlessness in the music, Stahnke expands the world of fixed half and whole tones to a world of endless tones, where the tone is an unfixed phenomenon. By allegorical adoption of a multi-layered microtonal structure, Stahnke breaks the barrier of the equal temperament that had characterized our somewhat limited world of the tempered fixed tones. On this slide, a page of the first act of the opera, the orange box indicates the microtones in the voice. The green box, the microtones in the strings, and the purple box, the microglissandi. Now I'm going to play you an excerpt from the first act containing all these aforementioned microtonal elements. Schrodinger's concept of aperiodic crystals, Stahnke's concept of difference tone harmony, which is the underpinnings of opera's harmonic structure, is equally significant. Stahnke mentions, if this enormous apparatus, the internet, with its uncontrollable character, has to be integrated on the stage, as a counterbalance, the precisely built crystal should also be present on the stage. My difference tone harmony could become a comprehensive Meloharmonic concept for the entire opera. Meloharmony is a term coined by Stahnke in his article Hybrid Thinking in Meloharmony, published on his official website. He explains this notion as follows. Meloharmony is a word that I came up with to denote the interrelationship of vertical and horizontal pitch organization within an open microtonal field. By definition, this field is open to every aspect of pitch organization. Interval relationships may exist within this field, regardless of whether or not they are also related to the older forms of melodic harmonic relationships. The only restriction lies in the avoidance of addressing anomalous fields, where neither horizontal nor vertical pitch relationships play a distinct role. In earlier pieces, such as his fourth string quartet titled Schrodinger's Crystals, inspired by Schrodinger's concept, Stahnke applies his system of difference tone harmony extensively. In Orpheus Kristall, Stahnke's Meloharmonic construction also rests upon difference tone harmony. This concept refers to what happens naturally in our ears when we hear an interval. As soon as we hear an interval, its summation tone emerges as overtone, and its quadratic as well as its cubic difference tones emerge as undertones. While these are naturally occurring phenomena, We, however, are only able to perceive these in specific acoustic conditions accompanied by enough amplification, correct intonation, and the lack of vibrato. Taking any ratio, F2 and F1, from the overtone series, where F2 has a higher frequency than F1, the quadratic difference tone of this ratio is F2 minus F1. For example, as illustrated here on this slide, based on C2 as fundamental, its 11th overtone, or F2, is F sharp 5 minus 49 cents, or the natural tritone with the ratio 11 to 8, which is about a quarter tone smaller than the equal tempered tritone. On the other hand, its 7th overtone, or F1, is B flat 4 minus 31 cents, or the natural minor 7th, the ratio 7 to 4, which is about 1/6 tone smaller than the equal tempered minor 7th. According to the formula F2 minus F1, the quadratic difference tone of these two frequencies sounding harmonically is 11 minus 7 equals 4, the fourth partial, which is C4. The summation tone of these two frequencies, or F1 plus F2, is 7 plus 11 equals 18. In this case, the 18th partial, which is D6. A bit more complicated and not as well known is the phenomena of cubic difference tones, with the formula 2 multiplied F2 minus F1. I'll just write it here. So the first one, the quadratic difference tone, was F2 minus F1. And the cubic difference tones right now is 2 multiplied F2 minus F1. That's the formula. I'll show you how it works. This phenomenon of cubic difference tones is actually not just one tone, but usually a cascade of difference tones consisting of the undertones of any ratio based on a specific fundamental. As you see on this slide, take for example the ratio 11 to 10, where 10th partial is E5 based on the fundamental C2. The first cubic difference tones is 2 multiplied 10 minus 11. So in this case, the F2 is 10 and F1 is 11. So we have 2 multiplied 10 minus 11, which gives you 9. So the first cubic difference tone is 9th overtone. In this case, D4 minus 4 cents. Then if we take D5, so the first cubic difference tone as F2, and if we take 10 as F1, then we have 2 multiplied 9 minus 10, which makes it 8. Which is C5 in this case. If we keep on calculating according to the same formula, the rest of the cubic difference tones will be 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Here we observe that all the undertones of the ratio 11 to 10 build a cascade of cubic difference tones, which are the 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, and the 2nd partials, as well as the fundamental tone itself. Extending the scope of his microtonal system, throughout Orpheus Kristall, Stahnke uses this natural phenomenon and builds just intoned chords based on both sorts of the difference tones, constructing the harmonic structure of the opera. In other words, his harmonic system makes us perceive consciously what we most often unconsciously hear. Stahnke deliberately uses unlimited meloharmonic possibilities, which his microtonal conceptions granting throughout the opera. He relates the microtonal world of difference tones to the Orpheus story using a triple Eurydice character, which could be interpreted as both Eurydice and also the three-headed dog Cerberus, as follows. A triple eurydice is generated as the composed different tone shadows of Orpheus' voice. The woman from the world of shadows pulls the man underneath. Orpheus appears as a double of the triple eurydice, as her projection. The song tones are actually the projection of a modified sound space. Each song tone is instrumentally projected in a different tone space, which unfolds in a strict and obsessive tone system. In Orpheus Kristall, the musical instruments often realize the different tones of the voices and also the higher instrumental parts to build complex, microtonally tuned chords. A duality arises from the conflict of the indefinite, improvisatory world of internet sounds and the definite, intricately built microtonal system of the opera. In fact, duality is a constant present notion throughout the opera. Duality of the ancient myth and the modern technological world. Duality of our solid universe, or multiverse, and the underworld of Hades. Duality of the world of fixed tones and the realm of non-fixed, fine-tuned tones. With this opera, Stahnke comments on the foundation of our existence in an enormous, complicated exterior. In the present time, using various possibilities of digital media, our existence is strictly tied to the outer world. In Orpheus Kristall, Orpheus' existence is represented not merely by the small stage where the performance takes place, but also by an external world made available through the internet musician's sounds. The incoming sounds, reflected in the hall, lead Orpheus to deal with his memories as they leave us to question our existence throughout the opera's content. The opera seeks to break the barrier between interior and exterior's realm to overcome the old Kristall equal temperament and the boundary of the immediate stage. Breaking the barrier between the exteriors is the internet's role in this production, an allegorical mediation between technology, the opera, and its message. From one standpoint, Orpheus Kristall could be interpreted as the aesthetic product of the artists involved in the project and the technological possibilities that the use of internet granted the project. In other words, a specific mythological and microtonal structure conceptualized by the composer, librettist, director, and the dramaturg on one side, and the technological structure of the internet on the other. Here, the internet mediates the projection of the artistic Orpheus' thoughts or voice, attempting to come to terms with his memories. The remote musicians react to his thoughts and improvise. Their reflection flows back to the stage through the media of internet. And Orpheus, now confronted with them, keeps trying, and that is how this interaction begins to exist. This opera features Quintet.net, a real-time internet performance environment which allows remote musicians to participate in the performance. The multimedia composer George Haidu at the Academy for Music and Theater Hamburg developed this concept, which Stahnke applies in this opera. In 2002, the internet was not fast enough to transport sounds. Thus, the sound engineers converted the live Orpheus character and the percussion sounds from Munich through a pitch tracker device in real time. They transported these sounds with MIDI data using the internet to give information to the remote solo musicians or ensembles in Amsterdam, Berkeley, and New York. These remote musicians heard the modified sounds while watching the stage's image through real video streaming. Accordingly, they reacted to the stage music and improvised upon it. The composer and the engineers, using mixed consoles, could take one or more of these new incoming MIDI data, modify them through a pitch tracker, samples, or electronic sounds, and play them in the hall. At some points, the incoming internet sounds were intriguingly filtered up to their 33rd overtone, filling the hall with a wide range of natural tones, as we can see on this slide. Sometimes they even filter the Orpheus voice through the incoming internet sounds. Therefore, the audience heard his voice in a kind of strange, blurred, deformed manner. Here is a section of the so-called poème internet of the opera's first act. Emphasizing the aesthetic significance of incorporating the digital media in the contemporary artwork, Stahnke's use of the internet as a media in this opera gives credence to the importance of the collective creativity and digital participation. In fact, using internet as a participatory platform to integrate the collective creative imagination has been a recurring subject in the 21st century. In the context of internet art projects, such as crowdsourced art, Yunan Literate highlights the importance of collective creativity and digital participation as follows. With the rise of the internet, artists interested in collaborative or participatory art found an ideal platform to reach an infinitely wider and more diverse pool of potential contributors. However, there is a simple difference between Stahnke's concept of internet opera and digital participatory projects, such as crowdsourced art. Stahnke's concept is in one sense participatory because it involves remote musicians to participate in shaping the Orpheus musical world, although it does not integrate the creativity of audience in the hall or in remote locations. It makes a complicated exchange between the stage and the remote musicians possible. Furthermore, through its innovative pioneering approach to tonal systems, digital media, and myth, it successfully mediates its existential message to the audience. In his 1954 essay, The Question Concerning Technology, Martin Heidegger explains the relationship between art and technology in the art-technology world as follows. Because the essence of technology is nothing technological, essential reflection upon technology and decisive confrontation with it must happen in a realm that is, on the one hand, akin to the essence of technology, on the other, fundamentally different from it. Such a realm is art. Yet the more we ponder about the essence of technology, the more mysterious the essence of art becomes. The closer we come to the danger, the more brightly do the days into the saving power begin to shine, and the more questioning will come. For questioning is the piety of thought. Here, Heidegger considers art as a mode for essential reflections on technology. In other words, he proposes the medium of technology as a means to question the essence of art, and at the same time, art as a means to question the essence of technology. The aim of my research was to investigate the essence of technology and tonal systems in the context of this contemporary opera, and at the same time to ponder the essence of this artwork by means of analyzing its technological aspects and musical structures. According to Stahnke's multi-dimensional approach to the arts, in Orpheus Kristall, it creates a new concept of opera by integrating the following elements: exotic intervallic and harmonic concepts, improvisation, exotic African percussion instruments, and the internet, all the while basing this construction on an elaborated version of the Orpheus myth, which contains psychological as well as existential connotations. Accordingly, he appoints an essential role for technology and microtonality in the context of his opera. This conventionally mythological but morally microtonal and technological opera is a relevant example of a multi-dimensional 21st century artwork. Thank you.
And now I'm pleased to welcome Christiaan Rainier here. Welcome, Christiaan. He's a multi-instrumentalist, performer, composer, improviser, and visual artist from Melbourne, Australia. He's now based in London. For the last decade, he has focused on extending the sonic possibilities of the lap steel guitar beyond its historic use and context. Drawing on traditional techniques and repertoire, he has explored new musical territories within an improvisational framework that embraces a disparate range of musical influences. 20th century classical music, tape looping, jazz intonation, drone, exotica, futurist noise, and pre-war Hawaiian steel guitar. To this end, he employs a combination of acoustic techniques, mechanical devices and preparations, as well as a selection of electronic effects, pedals. Parallel to this, he completed a master's degree at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, researching microtonality and new instrument design. Influenced by the work of composer Partch, he constructed a 66-key metallophone, the xylophone, which derived its ratios from a 53-key to the octave pitch matrix. He has performed the Australian premiere of Partch's work Vasto, the 1941 version on ABC Radio National, as well as in concert with acclaimed Australian contemporary music group Offspring, and so on. Christiaan Rainier has performed nationally and internationally at various festivals, art galleries and non-traditional performance spaces, often improvising live soundtracks to films as well. His most recent release, Man and the Echo, was released on vinyl last year to many positive reviews in leading experimental music publications, including The Wire. Welcome, Christiaan Rainier.
If I can get the computer right.
What's in the setup of your
Good. Thanks to Jan. So I've just got a couple of things to put together. afternoon. Do you need to write something? No, I'll write on here. I'm going to write on this one. Is that okay? No, I don't do that.
Man kann ja noch Sachen reißen dann.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Rainier, as you heard. I'm originally from Melbourne, Australia, but from around living in London. I'm going to talk to you a little about the guitar's place in Harry Partch's musical world, even though that is a bit sort of I'm going to tell you some things along the way. Unfortunately, I've given you a last-minute technical hiccup, so we'll get to that in a second. I figured I probably don't have enough time to really talk about Harry Partch, the composer, or Just Intonation in too much detail, just because of time constraints. But of course, I'd be happy to talk about any gaps or mistakes later on today. I guess I will say about Harry Partch, 1901 to 1974, probably the first and certainly one of the most important microtonal composers in America of the 20th century. Developed his own tuning system, with most of the time 43 notes to the octave, designed and built the instruments to play the music that he wrote within that system, taught other people to play his instruments, could play them well himself, probably had one of the first sort of DIY cottage industry record companies where he pressed his own records and mailed them out himself, recorded himself, even multi-tracking in the 1950s, which was quite rare at that time, and wrote, lectured and drank extensively. So, as some of you may know who lived Partch's life, very interesting character, someone who operated really outside academia for most of his life, occasionally dipping his toes in there and generally not necessarily getting along that well with everyone and moving back out into a very sort of independent existence. Defining just intonation. Can everyone hear me okay? Am I not talking too fast either, because I have that habit. Defining just intonation is no less tricky, although some of the presentations over the last couple of days have saved me a bit of time in terms of explaining some of the things. Guitarist John Schneider does a very good job writing in the liner notes of his CD Just West Coast. I quote, "A system in which pure intervals are used. Just intonation produces more euphonious consonances and complex dissonances than the standard equal temperament to which most Western instruments are presently tuned. The secret behind these pure intervals is tuning the individual pitches of the scale to the exact mathematical ratios found in the harmonic content of the vibrating strings themselves." And as a guitarist, become very quickly aware of those intervals existing on the strings, as many of you have discovered. I should also start off just by saying that all my quotes from here on by Harry Partch and the photographs are from Genesis of the Music, his book. Second edition was 1974, unless I state otherwise. Okay, so this is a photo of an adapted viola, John Schneider's replica of Partch's adapted viola, so this is a photograph that he emailed me. The guitar in a variety of transformed guises occupied an extremely important place in Harry Partch's creative life. It was the second instrument that he redesigned for use in his gradually expanding ensemble, and one of only two that he used over the arc of a compositional life of nearly 50 years. Just to give a little bit of prior context, Partch began exploring just intonation on this instrument, his first adapted instrument, which he called the adapted viola. He hadn't quite got into the habit of giving his instruments exotic names by this early stage, but later on there's all kinds of instruments, quadrangularis, reversum, ducal blossom. Some of you might know some of the percussion instruments that came later. Partch completed this viola's transformation somewhere between 1929 and 1930. He was living in New Orleans and starting to solidify his tuning theories. The adapted viola was a hybrid between a cello neck and fingerboard and a viola body, and was played between the knees in an upright position, sort of like a viola da gamba. Pitches, or more precisely ratios, were indicated by a series of brads, which were sort of large pen heads that were hammered into the fingerboard alongside the string to indicate finger placement. I think on John's he's kind of used, I think it's nail polish actually, a little bit different coloured nail polish. Partch also altered the instrument's tuning to G, D, A, E, low to high, but an octave down from violin, which is perhaps a subconscious reference to his childhood years and teen years playing the mandolin in Arizona. It seems that the sort of ghost of the mandolin keeps popping up in various ways throughout some of his instruments, especially even in the creation of the first Microtonal guitar. The adapted viola was used in his first song cycle, the 17 lyrics of Li Po, and which was composed in 1933, as well as settings of 2 biblical psalms and the potion scene from Romeo and Juliet. So, we're done with the adapted viola. Where do we go?
I guess I just marked the one picture, so maybe it's.
I'm not
yeah.
anyone to
Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Some of the images I'm going to have quite a high res, and so they're okay. Some of them I'm not sure. I'll see how they go. So let me see them on my screen. To a far greater extent, though, Partch's introduction of the guitar into his growing ensemble allowed him to synthesize his intonation theories, dramatic narratives, and iconoclastic self-image. It provided the foundation for his later development of large-scale works and his concept of corporeality, the integration of performers' bodies and even personalities into a larger compositional aesthetic. The guitar also allowed him to integrate microtonal melodic ideas within a harmonic context, as a fully self-contained vehicle for demonstrating his ideas as a solo performer. The guitar sound that Partch imagined as becoming part of his musical world was inspired by a host of influences. His early years playing the mandolin, the emergence of the 12-string guitar as a folk instrument in Mexico and the southwest of the United States, and in the music of popular musicians of the 30s and 40s like Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly. It's interesting to note that the first adapted guitar is also strung exactly the same way as a traditional folk instrument in Cuba called the tres, with 3 pairs of strings. It's fascinating to speculate as to whether Partch was aware of this instrument, although it really only started to make its appearance in common practice to the end of the 19th century. So adapted guitar number 1 itself was originally a used 1927 Martin 018K, and I'm very grateful to. I wrote to Martin and actually sent him another picture of this guitar. And I said, I'm sorry about what's happened on the fretboard, but can you tell me what kind of guitar this is? So they've confirmed that is actually the exact model of the guitar. He purchased the guitar in New York in 1934. Shortly thereafterwards, and with the aid of a grant from the Carnegie Foundation, he departed the United States for London to study, as he said, the histories of intonation and spoken word in music at the British Museum. He gradually started reworking the fretting on this guitar up until about 1942, adding new frets as new pieces were written and new pitches were required. So a lot of people who see this picture, and this is one of only 3 pictures of Partch actually playing this guitar that we're aware of, will note that there's these big gaps. It sort of seems like, well, that doesn't seem very complex microtonal. There's a lot of pitches missing. But basically, if you can see on this picture, you can see there's lines, which are the slots for the frets, which I'll get to in a second, where he could add more frets. The fretting pattern for this, on this photograph, is specifically for the work basket. 8 Hitchhiker's Inscriptions from a highway railing in Barstow, California, which is the full title, and which was the first piece that he wrote on this instrument, which is why fretting is set up in that way. So he replaced the usual low wire-style frets with high stainless steel ones fitted into slots in a brass plate, which was screwed onto the neck. My replica of the instrument obviously uses normal guitar fret wire, and looking at that photograph, it seems like it would actually be a really impractical instrument to play and quite difficult. So I'm not sure, as a guitarist looking at that, it seems like it's almost like a guitar which has the fret scalped out, which can be quite a challenging guitar to play if it's not the kind of thing you're used to. So in terms of the fretting, 24 frets within the octave, not equal obviously, on the top string, 19 on the middle, and 30 on the bottom. Oh, sorry, 24 frets on the bottom, 19 in the middle, and 30 on the top. I really should know that. Which results in this sort of slightly Tetris-like configuration of frets on the fingerboard. Of the 30 frets on the top string, 3 have been added to Partch's original final layout, basically as a personal aid for vocal pitching. In the next octave, there are again 2 frets, which are octaves of these 2, which is a 9/7, sort of sharp by about 30 cents. Major third, and 4/3, the perfect 4. So they're up here. Again, for particular vocal lines, actually hold on a second, for particular vocal lines in some of the words. And then there are these 4 lines, these 4 fret lines, which are just lines, and they're visual sort of aids for me as well, for some fretless passages in a piece he wrote called Letter from Pablo. The 6 strings are tuned in 3 pairs of octaves, separated by the interval of a just major third. So Partch's fundamental tone that he uses to generate all his pitches is the middle one, which is G, which goes 1/1, which is that. So then you've got a 5/4, or a pure 5 major third above that, and then down 5 major third down to E flat, which is an 8/5. So you get E flat, G, B, which is a just augmented chord. It's a bit messy on the also not. So Partch on his instrument narrowed the fingerboard as well by a 1/4 inch on each side of the neck to make it once again more like the mandolin, whose distinctive tremolo appears in quite a lot of music around this time and even a bit later. So Partch writes, and I quote, "The instrument is played more like a mandolin than a guitar, but its low range of pitch and 2/1 octave pairs contribute to a result that is unlike either." He used this guitar to perform the first versions of his early song cycles, such as Barstow, US Highball, and Letter from Pablo, as well as a short triptych of pieces called December 1942, which he wrote in December 1942. This is a photograph of Partch rehearsing for a series of concerts at Carnegie Hall, which is quite bizarre, in 1944. At this stage, he's already got his chronolodium, the microtonal pump organ, and he's still got the first guitar at this stage, and he's dressed in a suit, which is not a common way to see Partch dressed. So it is telling to plot the disappearance and reappearance of the guitar in these first three aforementioned works that I mentioned, Vasto, US Highball, and Letter from Hobo Pablo. As Partch's vision shifts from a sort of individual personal one to a more collective one. For example, Vasto underwent numerous revisions, beginning with the intimacy of the first incarnation, and which was for adapted guitar and baritone. Later versions include introduced the chromelodeon, the microtonal organ, the kithara, which is his sort of reimagining of the Greek lyre. In 1954, Guitar 1 is replaced by Guitar 3. Hopefully, I'll get to that a little bit later. And the kithara is replaced with the surrogate kithara, which allows the performer to play more complex parts on it. And he adds a diamond marimba. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into these instruments if you're not familiar with them, but there's lots of stuff on the internet about that. By the time the final version of Vasto was written in 1968, percussion was king and the guitar was gone. So this is also the case with US Highball, which is another work. Although here, third revision in 1955, the original guitar is completely gone as well. It's interesting to see how, particularly in that work, which is a half-hour depiction of Depression-era life as a hobo in America, how he shifts from using the guitar in the original version to later versions, which are much more percussion-based. In the final work that I'd like to talk about, with the emergence and disappearance of the guitar, Letter from Hobo Pablo, a Depression-era message from a hobo friend, because it's a full title. 4 versions of the work exist. The last one, in 1973, brings back the guitar, although in its sort of mid-1950s transformation, which I will get to as well as I sort of go through the guitars. Now this one is probably going to be not best quality. This is actually from a 1945 newspaper article advertising one of Partch's concerts at the University of Madison, Wisconsin. It's the last picture of him actually playing the first adapted guitar. In the back, you can see the kithara. I don't know what's going on with his face, but he's half asleep. But this picture actually only turned up maybe 20 years ago. I think John Schneider again had a hand in locating this via newspaper archives. The interesting thing about this article, it was photographed from 1945, is that it shows that there is an overlap between this instrument and his development of the next one. Notation on the adapted guitar 1 is a tablature with each pitch to be played expressed as a ratio on one of 3 lines. So I'll just quickly write just a little bit. So if I was going to write the opening figure of Vasto, which is a sort of a ritornello, keeps coming back in various ways. I hope my handwriting is okay. So this is the guitar part, and C5. That's a triplet. Hopefully you can see what I'm writing. Essentially, I won't go any more than that if you want. But essentially, that each string, top string, middle string, bottom string, the ratio that you're supposed to press. The open string, in this case, the top pitch on the top string. It makes a lot of sense when you've got the instrument. It doesn't really make a lot of sense because it's very hard to sort of know what's going up, what's going down, if you're not familiar with the language of ratios. With the vocal parts, basically they're written on separate. They're either written in sort of the text is simply notated in proportion to the guitar part, and it's up to you to decide how are you going to express that? And if there's a specific sum part that's expressed in traditional staff notation, with ratios written above the note to indicate precise tuning of the pitches. So maybe I'll just, as a way of testing the microphone as well, so I'll just play you the opening part of faster. So the actual harmonic movement of the ritornello is G minor, A minor 7, repeated, and this is very spicy 10 over 9 at the top, as opposed to C-sharp diminished with a very sharp third, and a sort of quarter tone C-sharp major. And then it goes to the other strings. It's almost like a bit of a demo of the whole sort of instrument in the first 2 seconds of the piece. The ritornello returns in different versions, either a triplet, or and there's even the third version of Vasto where it's sort of a quasi kind of rusciato where it's a rougher kind of approach, slightly sped up compared to the earlier version. So I'm going to just play you a few pieces, just a few of the inscriptions from Vasto. Did I start at 10-2? I think I did. Alright. Basically, Vasto, Partch composed Vasto in 1940. He found these inscriptions on a highway road outside Vasto, California, which is a little town outside of the desert. And these were things that people had written on the highway road while they were waiting for a lift. And they're written by different people, and they go through all kinds of different moods, from despair to erotic, religious, and he collected them all into this compendium of 8, of which I'll play a few. Basically, with the freely spoken part at the beginning, the only way to really know what was intended was for me to go back to the earliest recordings of Partch did of the work, which is only the second version. There's no original recording of the first version. And to really pay attention to the speech patterns. That Partch had a very particular speaking voice, very tonal, very inflected, and is probably, one can argue, one of the reasons why he became interested in microtonality, and the way in which microtonality can represent speech. He's one of those people that's a long time ago, I remember. He's one of those people that's very succinct sometimes voice, and you can see how he's trying, in many, particularly the early works, where he's very concerned with speech, to kind of reflect that on the instruments. Number 1. girl, age 19, 5 feet 10 inches, black hair, brown eyes. Going home to Boston, Massachusetts. It was 4 and I'm hungry to go. I wish I was dead. But today, I am going to Boston. Yeah, Massachusetts. It's 4 p.m. And I'm hungry and broke. I was dead. But today I am to Boston, Massachusetts. Number 2. Go to 530 East Lemon Avenue in Monrovia, California. For easy handout. Go to 530 East Lemon in Monrovia for an easy handout. Gentle. Yo, oh, go to 530 East Lemon. Age 19, brown eyes, brown hair, you can see. 19, East Ventura Street, Las Vegas, Nevada. Object, metronome.
This photo is courtesy of Stephen's Severing House, and this is the original adapted guitar too, obviously. Again, while still in Madison, in Wisconsin, in 1946, Partch developed his adapted guitar number 2, which was, as he wrote, a Hawaiian-type guitar, that is, with a high nut, which allows a steel or heavy brass rod to be pressed down in the strings to make the stops. 4 strings are added, making 10 in all, and all are tuned beginning with a low 4-3, or C, which is the lowest tone on the cello. In the rest of the tuning, there's a choice of O tonality, major, or U tonality, minor. I won't go into the theoretical aspect of that too much. Essentially, it's got to do with the overtone series and its undertone, and its inversion, the undertone series, which I think you spoke about yesterday. So, taking what is essentially a 1940s Oahu brand Hawaiian square neck guitar, he relocates the 6 guitar tuners, adds 4 mandolin tuners, modifies the headstock. Because the standard string spacing was kept intact, 4 new strings are pushed to either side of the fingerboard.
The white, in this case, a white ruler inscribed with ratios shows the pitches produced by the 16/9 strings, so the F roughly, whilst multicolored triangles painted on the fingerboard indicate the quality of particular intervals at the base of the triangle. As this is not really an instrument that I'm intimately involved with, I can't really explain to you the triangles in great detail, but there's a relationship as well between the colour analogy of the triangles and Partch's colour analogy on his chronologion, which is the Microtonal organ. This is John Schneider's replica of the adapted guitar 2. Essentially what happens is in terms of notation, is it's written as sort of tablature using traditional staff notation. And if you can imagine the 10 strings starting in treble clef, the bottom string is a G, the lower middle C, and then just skip a line and you go up to D, 2 octaves above middle C, and that gives you the 10 open strings. And then if a ratio is written above a string, it means that it's the ratio that's written on the top black strip. If the ratio is written below, then it's a ratio that's indicated on the white. And because of the fact that you're playing with a straight metal bar, obviously if you play a 3-2 as indicated on the bottom white strip, you're going to get other intervals possibly matching with one of the ones indicated on the top black, sometimes not, depending on what is required. I think it was 2 years ago now, a German group called Ensemble Musikfabrik rebuilt all the instruments required to produce Harry Partch's large-scale opera, whatever you want to call it, called Illusion of the Fury. And John was commissioned as well to make another replica of the second adapted guitar, but he told me that they didn't want to pay to have the coloured triangles, which is why it doesn't have any of the cool coloured triangles. So it's basically just got the top and the bottom ratios expressed on what is a modified 12-string guitar with a nut. In this case, it's actually equal spacing within a normal 12-string nut. So the strings are actually closer together than the original Partch guitar. This is Harry playing the guitar at the time. It's the cover of the group Partch, which is led by Joel Schneider. This is the cover of the last CD they produced of the Plectrum and Percussion Dances, which is a series of pieces. And it's interesting, if you go back to the picture of the original, the volume controls and the tone controls there, one's missing now. So a pickup, which is going to be put in later at some point, probably in the 80s and that. But if you look at this picture, you can see there's almost like a dice. I don't know, it's like dice for volume control, which is very sort of rockabilly or something. I just noticed that actually. Alright. Adapted Guitar 2 was used extensively in various works composed between 1949 and 1973. These include a number of the 11 intrusions, the 1954 version of Barstow, and many of his large-scale dramatic works, such as Revelation in the Courthouse Park, a work called And on the Seventh Day, Petals Fell in Petaluma, Ring Around the Moon, and, as I mentioned, Illusion of the Fury. The first of the 11 intrusions is entitled The Rose, and uses this guitar, voice, and diamond marimba. But the piece is in fact a complete transformation of its first appearance as the first movement of December 1942, which was composed for voice and this guitar. And I'll try and just flip the hand with this. I'll just very briefly show you, this is the last. This is essentially the first adapted guitar, as we saw in the beginning, which he converted in the mid-50s to a lap steel guitar as well. So the raised nut, so you could play the steel bar as in the previous guitar. He covered the original fingerboard, which had the frets, and painted it in these bold colours. And as you can see, there's written underneath, there's a vague equal tempered pitches, and you can't really see on this picture, but there's also ratios indicated. And all the strings are tuned to G, or octaves of G, which is his fundamental tone, and it's played with a slide. but it's not really used as a solo. It was never used as a solo instrument. It was always used as part of another ensemble because it's obviously very restricted in terms of what it can do. That's the score. The only score that uses all three of the guitars: Vanity, which is the 10th piece of the Rhythm Intrusion; Guitar 3, which is the one I just showed you; Guitar 2, the one that Harry was playing; and Guitar 1, that one. Although this Guitar 1 is probably the score for the fretless version, which I very briefly showed you, which is that, which is a fretless electric version of that instrument. Because it's fretless, you also have more pitches because you don't have to worry about the physical aspect of having to press a string down between frets, which Stefan was mentioning yesterday. Unfortunately, guitarists have fingers which are that wide. Okay, so this is a picture of Harry in 1973 on the set of the film Dream That Remains, holding the guitar. The reconfigured version of this. That one. All these instruments are now moved to Washington University when Dean Drummond, who had the instruments at Montclair University in New Jersey, he died, and so the instruments have now moved. Essentially, there's only this guitar and the adapted guitar 2, the ones that have really high-res pictures. Those are the only ones that are left. This guitar, obviously now, is this guitar, and the other two are gone. They got lost at some point in Harry's 40,000 moves that he did over the course of his life. So hopefully I've got time to just play you a little bit of The Rose, which is the first first piece of December 1942, and then I'll stop. This guitar didn't expect it to be so hot nosed.
we are going to have another guitarist here and composer, Siegfried Steinkogler. He is, yes, now it's an important sentence to say, by the way, we are neither married, nor are we brothers and sisters. We just happen that my husband and he, they come from the same city, like Ebensee, as you could read it in the Lake District, Salzburg. And sometimes I have to, because I keep getting asked, he keeps getting asked, so sometimes I just say, by the way. So his wife is sitting over here, by the way. So, okay, Siegfried, he studied composition and guitar at the University Mozarteum in Salzburg. And after his studies, he toured through many European countries performing numerous contemporary pieces for the guitar. The public interest on his microtonal compositions is constantly growing. Mainly his guitar works have been published by Universal Edition, Edition Modern, Munich and Strecke Verlag Hamburg. Orchestral works like Die Ebene am See, Concerto for Harmonic and Orchestra, in Concertamiento for harp and ensemble, and his full-length music theatre, Lodewijk. Sorry, this is Welsh, I'm not very good in Welsh at the moment. I only speak it on Mondays. Have been performed in cities like Siena, Arezzo, Firenze, Sofia, and so on. During the recent years, Siegfried Steinkogler was more and more focusing on education and composition. He is taking on the challenge of writing easy-to-play microtonal pieces for learners, and I think he's also talking about this aspect in his compositions. Welcome, Siegfried, on stage.
Hello.
It's not my music for guitar I want to present to you in my today's lecture, but it's a string quartet of mine, microtonal work. But before I want to start with some theoretical things. Many years have been gone since the first musicians have been using microsteps in their compositions. which was a courageous innovation in the 1920s. Now, today, it's no innovation at all, of course, and no courage is needed to compose with microtones. Microtonal composition got much more common than in those days, at least among academic circles. But don't ask which composer manages to have more performances, the one who composes in what could be called now traditional halftone system, or the one using microsteps. More than once I was asking a musician, I wrote a microtonal piece, do you want to play it? And I was promptly responded, you did what? Are you serious? So it seems that our mission is not accomplished yet. And a good deal of persuasion is still needed to convince interpreters of the importance of playing microtonal music. Before I'm going to switch over to my own music, let me consider some different ways of using microtonality and therefore go a little bit into history. One of the first to use microsteps in his music was Richard Stein in his concert piece for violoncello and piano in the year 1909. When doing so, he intended to divide the halftone step to have a wider range of melodic possibilities. Even the famous Mexican Julian Carrillo used microtonality more in a melodic way. Some other pioneers, like Harry Partch, of course, have constructed their own instruments and their own systems, tone systems, either derived from ancient Greek scales or from the harmonic series. More radical in terms of using microtonality were composers like Ivan Wisniewski and Alois Haber, who both were composing in more than one tone system, who both developed their ideas around 1920 and who both wrote a theory of harmony. Haber's one was reissued only recently in 2 parts. This work was called Harmonielehre des diatonischen, chromatischen Viertel-, Drittel-, Sechstel- and Zwölftel-Tonsystems. The title was, and the work was written in German language. It was written in the years 1942 and 43, and it was edited by Horst Peter Hesse, who was a teacher and professor and musicologist here at the University of Mozarteum. Some years ago he retired. So this seemed to be a completely different approach where microtonality was used not only in melody but also in harmony. Franz Richter-Herf, composer from Salzburg, again deduced his equalic music from ancient Greek scales and from the harmonic series. So studying the sources led to two tendencies among the representatives of the early use of microtonality. That's at least my opinion. The first tendency is dividing chromaticism into quarter, into sixth, or even smaller steps. The other tendency is to form an individual tone system, mostly or mainly related to the harmonic series. But how did it come to use microtonality in my music? After my studies here at the Mozarteum Salzburg, I composed in halftone system, but around the year 2000, I got the feeling that there is too less possibility for me to express things, and so I started to use microtones. and first works. Okay, these were some of the pioneers, not concerning my music. Yes. Yeah, we have a list of some of my microtonal compositions, and I wrote the years of composition in brackets, so we can see what I was saying. The first two works, Die Ebene am See for orchestra and In Concertamente for harp and ensemble, also available on CD. And later on, I wrote more and more works in using microtonality. And now, to give you an impression of my music, please let me give you an audio example. I hope I managed to do this. Yeah. Now I'd like to do a little bit of analysis of Wandteppichszene 1 before some details to the piece. Wandteppichszene is composed in 8th tone system, and but I wouldn't say the word system, since I cannot feel any system in my work at all. But maybe I will be contradicted by you. In the explanations of the score, I wrote quite radically, Wandteppichszene is not basically a microtonal piece. Basically, it is chromatic. Microtonality is mainly used as a color and for dividing chromatic steps. But let's see if this is true. Today I'm feeling quite different. Concerning the title Wandteppichszene, I wrote, the music describes an imaginary scene as it could be shown on a big tapestry, a big carpet on the wall. And for defining the microsteps, I was using following signs. And also with same. Yes, and up and down, both. And also with sharp and flat. 1/8 tone higher, a quarter tone, 3/8 higher. And the same down. So I hope you can see this is a little bit small, I think. Does it make any sense?
You can make it bigger if you want.
I can make what?
You can make it bigger with the mouse.
Oh,
Maybe, maybe second page.
Okay.
Probably second page cello. First line.
Okay. That's the thing.
Also dass man alles sehen kann, das Große, das geht. Aber Teile kann man sagen.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
Just a glass sign.
Plus and minus is really bigger.
Above
This is a number in the middle. Up, over. Links. Plus 1.
Okay.
big form of Manfred. Kristall number 1 is in 5 parts. Part number 1 is from the beginning, of course, to bar 14, which is here. The part 1 is dominated by tremolo, by dense chords, microtonal sounds. As you can see, the tremolo all the time, violin 1, 2, and viola, and microtonal chord in violin 2 and viola, changing a little bit in bar number 4, and changing on and on. We have an important motive in bar number 11, a rhythmical one, which is placed at the end of every part, and always a little bit varied. And another important motive in bar number 12, with upgoing and downgoing chromatic, but microtonal chromatic steps in all 4 instruments. The second part is beginning with bar number 15, here, yeah, and lasting to onto bar 24, which is here. We can see the rhythmical motif at the end of this part. As a contrast to the first part, here we have long-lasting harmonies, low in viola and violoncello, and all kinds of glissandi in violin 1 and 2. Here again, in bar 21, we have those up and down going microtonal chromatic. Yeah. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, and back. And again at the end the rhythmic motive. The third part is a very quiet passage, and again a big contrast with 8-tone harmonies throughout, and beginning in half-tone system, but not very long, and microtonality is still coming in again. Well, I think here as the score is a little bit small, I cannot. I'm not so sure. I had to look it up. I think here, and this bar is leading into the next section, the next passage, part number 4, which is very much related to the beginning. Tremolo again, and this part is leading to the climax of the whole piece. Here, 40, 45. And again ended by the rhythmical motif. And this leads to part number 5, which is related to part 2 again. This was long-lasting chords with with many glissandi, but now high chords. First, the violins. Again, the motif with up and down going chromatic, microtonal chromatic. Yeah, it still ends with the remarkable rhythmic motif. So far, my analysis of Ante Szene 1.
Aber wenn wir das weglassen, dann sind es 4 Stunden. Ja, Sie schon.
Nein.
Nicht Deutsch, ne? Und es kommen 2 Werke vor. Also das Ganze. Nur die 2 Werke. Ja, geht auch, kann ich vorstellen, muss ich vorstellen.
Those who have heard the concert here yesterday have heard 2 more microtonal works of mine. There was a guitar piece called Tres Alfombras Microtonales, which means 3 carpets. Carpets, yeah. Like Manfred. I'm always composing carpets, as it seems. And the second piece was played by fantastic Onmi Han, with violoncello solo driving rondo. And about this piece, I want to talk a little bit, not only about the piece, but about edition. The International Society of Ecumenic Music made called Wettbewerbsstücke, which means competition pieces, where some of my colleagues, among them Johannes Kochi and Agustin Christiaan, and me, tried to compose microtonal works for beginners, for students. It's not an easy thing, as you can imagine, as you have to invent microtonal structures that are very easy, and very easy and understandable for the youth. The project is rather new, and only some of the young students have played our pieces by now. But we are working on this project, and we want to convince more and more teachers that it's an important thing for learners, for beginners, to deal with microtonality, as it's an important thing for ear training. So when we meet next at the next symposium, I hope I have a lot of good news, and that many young players have taken on the challenge to play microtonal pieces of our book. Thanks for your kind attention.